Have you ever looked back at old health and nutrition advice and thought, how could they believe that? Just a few generations ago, doctors were recommending cigarettes to their patients. Even big-name brands had ads with taglines like, "More doctors smoke Camels." And it wasn't just smoking. Sugar was once marketed as a weight loss tool. You'd see ads encouraging people to eat candy bars to curb their appetite. Even infant nutrition wasn't spared. Formula companies aggressively pushed bottle feeding over breastfeeding, which sometimes even led to malnutrition in parts of the world like Africa. And let's not forget the food pyramid either. For years, it told us to load up on refined carbs, 6 to 11 servings of bread, rice, and cereals per day, and to minimize fat as much as possible at the same time. All that stuff seems ridiculous now. Well, here's a wild thought. Future generations will look at some of our current nutrition beliefs and feel the exact same way. So in this video, I want to present 4 types of nutrition advice that will seem straight up barbaric in 100 years from now. Obviously, this is my own opinion and will be somewhat controversial, so feel free to disagree. Number 1 is the obsession with macronutrients over micronutrients. One of the biggest myths in health and fitness today is the idea that getting your protein, carbs, and fats perfectly dialed in is the key to health. You hear this everywhere, from influencers to meal plans to fitness apps. Track your macros and you'll get shredded, build muscle, and have tons of energy. The thing is that yes, macronutrients definitely matter. You need enough protein to build muscle and enough fat for hormone production. But once you cover those basic needs, the real game changer isn't really your perfect macro split. Humans can thrive on many different diets and all kinds of macronutrient setups if you account for calories and minimum intake. That's pretty much all modern nutrition research summed up in one sentence. Even Weston Price figured this out over 100 years ago when he looked at different people and cultures around the world. They all adapted to what they had around them and made the best of it. Now, of course, there are things like individual preference, allergies, and metabolic differences. So I'm not saying you shouldn't play around with your macro split and see what you're thriving on. But on a population level, it doesn't really make sense to try to find the one true diet for everyone. Now, what you can't get away with is neglecting your micronutrients, vitamins and minerals that your body needs in tiny amounts, but for really important jobs, like energy production, hormone balance, nervous system function, and immune health. Most diet plans out there just assume that people's micronutrient status is fine and you get everything through a normal diet. But it couldn't be further from the truth. The more carbs you eat, the more magnesium you will burn through. The more you exercise, the more you need to look at your electrolytes. Or if you have a zinc and copper imbalance, you can get symptoms like fatigue, hormonal imbalances, and anxiety. All of these patterns are already known in the literature, but not spotted in the average person due to bad nutrient testing, which relies mostly on serum blood tests. So you're told everything is fine and you don't need to work on anything. Only when you look at tissue levels will you notice how bad your deficiencies and imbalances really are. Further generations will probably laugh at how we obsess over macro ratios while walking around deficient in basic nutrients. The truth is, getting your macros right is the easy part, but optimizing micronutrients, that's what actually moves the needle for your health. Next are one-size-fits-all diets. This one is very similar to my first point. Another piece of advice that's going to age very badly is the idea that there's one ideal diet for everyone. But we finally started to realize that the perfect diet is highly individual, and in the future, this is going to be way more of a focus. What you eat should depend on your nutrient profile, your genetics, your biomarkers, and even your past experiences with food. Ever wonder why someone else thrives on keto while you feel like garbage? Or why certain superfoods make you feel worse, not better? It's not just in your head. Epigenetics, nutrient metabolism, and individual food tolerance play a massive role in how we respond to what we eat. For example, there's the BCMO1 gene that codes for an enzyme that converts beta-carotene, which is found in things like carrots and sweet potatoes, into active vitamin A, which the body actually uses. People with certain variants of this gene are poor converters, meaning they struggle to turn beta-carotene into usable vitamin A. This is a big deal for vegans and vegetarians because they rely on plant sources for this nutrient. If you are a poor converter and avoid animal products, you will feel much worse than someone who follows the same diet but doesn't have a BCMO1 variation. So in the future, people will definitely tailor their diets with the help of lab work and genetic analysis. They will think it's wild that we all just ate off the same food pyramid and hope for the best. Number 3 is factory farming. This one should be less controversial, but is still pretty messed up. I'm convinced that in 100 years, people are going to look back at our current system of industrial animal agriculture and be horrified. Factory farming is built on the idea of producing as much meat, dairy, and eggs as possible, as fast as possible, and for the lowest cost. And to do that, animals are treated more like machines than living beings. Chickens packed into tiny cages where they can't move, pigs kept in crates where they can't even turn around, cows pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, living in filthy conditions and never seeing a blade of grass. Now, I don't mean this in some kind of preachy way. I myself used to buy the cheapest meat that I could find until a few years ago and just kind of accepted the moral repercussions of it, because I thought it didn't really affect me. But what you have to understand is that these miserable living conditions aren't just bad for the animals, they're bad for you too. Animals raised in factory farms are routinely given antibiotics, not just to treat disease, but to prevent it. This overuse will not just land on your plate, but it also contributes to antibiotic resistance, which is a major public health concern that's already making some infections harder to treat. Also, the meat itself often has a worse nutrient profile, with more inflammatory fats and less omega-3s compared to pasture-raised animals. Generally, and this should be obvious, the less healthy the animal, the less healthy the meat that it provides. I'm pretty sure future generations will look back and say, wait, you locked animals in tiny boxes, pumped them full of drugs, and then ate their flesh like it was normal? It is kind of messed up. The last thing I want to talk about are untested and unregulated supplements. This one is complicated. As you probably know, the supplement industry is fairly unregulated in most countries around the world, which has actually not just had downsides, but also some benefits. So let's start with the benefits. Because the industry is so open, there is a ton of product variety. You can walk into a store or click a few buttons online and get access to everything from vitamin D to magnesium to some rare herbal extract that was grown in the mountains of Nepal. You don't need a prescription, you don't have to sit through a doctor's appointment, and you're not limited just to the nutrients that a mainstream practitioner thinks are worth testing. So for people who know what they're doing, this open access is amazing because you can take your health into your own hands. But freedom can obviously also create a lot of chaos. Lack of regulation will also mean a lack of oversight. A lot of supplements don't actually contain what they say they do. Some have too little of an active ingredient to be effective. Others contain too much, which can push you into dangerous territory. And then there's also the contamination problem. Heavy metals, mold, bacteria, or even pharmaceutical drugs have been found in supposedly natural products. It really is a mess. So the bottom line is that supplements can absolutely be a powerful tool, but we as the consumers need to do our due diligence and force manufacturers into better standards. That means more transparent labeling, third-party testing, and strict limits on contaminants like heavy metals, mycotoxins, and mold. In 100 years from now, we will definitely still use supplements, but hopefully we will demand more from the companies that make them. Great, now that I talked about what I believe we're getting wrong, let's also discuss how things could improve. This is just the logical conclusion from everything that I talked about. First, nutrient tracking will go from just macronutrients to also include micronutrients. People will track their magnesium, zinc, and vitamin A the way that we currently track carbs and protein. Doing this requires more specialized tests that go beyond normal serum markers. Next, personalized nutrition will be the norm. You get your blood, hair, and DNA analyzed, and your diet and supplements will be tailored to your unique needs and genetics. Many people are already kind of doing this, but it's definitely not the norm for the average person. Third, factory farming will probably be seen as one of the biggest moral blunders of the 21st century. What we will do about it is still up for debate, but I don't think outlawing meat is the answer, and instead it should be a shift towards more ethically sourced meat. And lastly, supplements should go through the same rigorous testing as pharmaceuticals. That means full transparency, third-party certifications, and testing for all kinds of contaminants. To wrap up this video, let me say that we're still in the early days of nutritional science. We've come a long way, but we're also just scratching the surface. Much of the advice out there is oversimplified and not targeted to the right people. But we're definitely learning, and as we learn more about our body, genetics, and the real role that nutrients play, we will realize that a lot of what we believe today isn't just inaccurate, it's borderline harmful. On this channel, I often like to entertain ideas that are somewhat outside of the current consensus, because you have to understand that you cannot innovate with the status quo. So learn about your own needs and question what's normal. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's healthy. Also, don't forget to check out the video description for more free resources and my programs. They will help you if you're looking for step-by-step systems on topics such as diet planning, detox, and chronic fatigue recovery, and to avoid the most common beginner mistakes that I see people making all the time. For more info, just open the description, it will all be listed there.